That's right.
Well, sometimes no response is better than none, I guess.
Not very often.
No, you want to have positive.
Yeah, even if, well, even negative response, a response means the email actually got there.
Okay,
Right.
I think it's time.
It's time.
We only do a couple of small things to be more or less formal, and one of them is to open the meeting with the ringing of the bell.
The meeting is on.
Hear that? And it's my pleasure this morning to have the duty of introducing our featured guest, Mr. John Nanni. He's not brand new to the Farmington Rotary Club because we have honored and featured him in a couple of different End Polio Nowadays, World Polio Day presentations. And so I was happy when we could land him for our speaker. But let's do an official introduction because as Phil mentioned earlier to John, it is a recorded program and will end up in our library. And should someone go there looking for information, they'll know a little bit more about the presenter than just turning on the YouTube and letting it run. John is a member of the MOT Rotary Club in Middletown, Delaware. I guess we all know a little bit about Delaware this year. John's been active in leadership roles in his club, including club president in 2019-20. So he's a recently passed. Some of us are passed in other ways, with a few more years in between. John's given almost 300 polio talks to Rotary clubs, district conferences and assemblies, RILA, Rotaract, Interact clubs, and zone training seminars from Rhode Island to North Carolina. And of course, now with Zoom, he's all over the world if possible.
Yeah.
The 3 P's in John's life are polio, post-polio syndrome, and Rotary's Polio Plus. Rotary's really lucky to have John
Absolutely
in those particular functions. John currently is District 7630 Polio Plus Chair, which includes all of Delaware and the Eastern Shore of Maryland.
Hey.
The long list I won't totally go through, but hunger, again, the Rise Against Hunger Rotary Ambassador is one of the badges that he wears proudly. He is a TRF, the Rotary Foundation major donor, member of the Paul Harris Society, member of the Rotary Foundation Benefactor Endowment, and the USA coordinator for the world's greatest meal to help end polio now. I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about the world's greatest meal. John is the recipient of Rotary's Regional Service Award for a polio-free world. His education is as a graduate of the State University of New York at Delhi, pronounced Delhi. John served on Delhi's advisory board to the president for over 10 years. He's also a board member of the Polio Survivors Rotary Action Group, board member of the state of Delaware's Architectural Accessibility Board, and you will hear more and recognize why that's an important function. Board member of the Polio Network of New Jersey and Delaware, a polio survivor support group. And one of the marks that I have consistently cheered for him every time I read an update on The status is he's a platelet donor.
Cool.
25 plus donations, which equals 40 plus gallons. He knows vampires very well. He's a volunteer driver for MOT Meals on Wheels, founder and former owner of Paper and Ribbon Supply Company, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. A former board member of 6 different nonprofit art organizations. And more.
I was going to say, I'm glad he doesn't have any more jobs.
And more. John is a polio survivor, class of 1953. And I can identify pretty well with that time period. That's when I was sucking on sugar cubes. He was paralyzed from the neck down for 6 months prior to the Salk vaccine major testing. He now uses a wheelchair for most of his daily mobility due to severe post-polio syndrome issues. John and his wife, Christine, live in Middletown, Delaware, and are professional singers.
Hey,
Rhapsody and Two, duet, cabaret act. Mainly singing Broadway show tunes, and I want to talk to John more about that, but this is enough of an introduction that if he can't handle it from me, trouble. So John Nanni, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen now. And, thank you so much for inviting me to talk to you today about the 3 Ps in my life: polio, post-polio syndrome, and Rotary's Polio Plus. And what the current coronavirus pandemic has in common with pre-Salk vaccine days. I want to point out at the very beginning that although I'll be talking about some negative issues in my personal life with polio, I do so representing about 2 million polio survivors here in North America and more than 20 million polio survivors throughout the world. And that life is good, and no matter what the future holds for me physically, I truly am one of the lucky ones. Polio was one of the most feared infectious diseases in the 20th century. And I think everyone would agree that so far the coronavirus is the most feared infectious disease so far in the 21st century.
correct.
However, polio is not just a modern day disease. Hieroglyphics found in Egypt more than 3,500 years ago show a polio victim on crutches with one leg smaller than the other. This is the same strain of the polio virus that we are trying to eradicate today in Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Wow.
So we fast forward to the summer of 1953 when I got polio, where hospital polio wards with these dreaded iron lungs help many polio victims breathe. And what is ironic is that yesterday's iron lungs are today's ventilators.
Yep.
Polio is a virus that attacks the nerves that control your muscles. COVID-19, a virus that mainly attracts the respiratory system, but so much is unknown about the coronavirus, especially the long-term effects for those who have been infected. However, scientists actually knew less about polio back in the 50s than today's scientists know about coronavirus. Like COVID-19, they didn't know why some that caught polio had no symptoms or mild symptoms, and others so severe that they died or had extreme outcomes. In the case of polio, paralyzed limbs and breathing issues. Like COVID-19, people were contagious before they had symptoms, thus unknowingly infecting others. In fact, they now know that for every diagnosed case of paralytic polio, there were as many as 200 people walking around with little or no symptoms of polio and infecting others. Many of those now have post-polio syndrome, and because they don't know they had polio, have no idea what's causing their pain and their issues, often misdiagnosed with other illnesses. Another similarity between COVID-19 and polio is that both targeted specific yet different age groups. COVID-19 especially lethal for the elderly and polio for the young. Polio is what's called an enterovirus, where the polio virus enters the body through the mouth. Young kids put more things in their mouths versus adults, which is one reason why young kids got polio more than adults.
Wow.
And what I just recently learned is remote learning is not new to the COVID pandemic. Back in 1937, Chicago schools were closed for 3 weeks because of a polio epidemic. Some 315,000 children in grades 3 through 8 continued their education at home, receiving lessons on the radio. Like today's pandemic in the 50s before the Salk vaccine, people were frightened. It was a scary time because catching polio was as easy as catching a cold. Here we have a bank of iron lungs, polio victims stacked on top of one another. Here's a baby only a few months old in an iron lung. If one member of the family came down with polio, many times not only was the whole family quarantined, but often the whole street was quarantined. And a strange thing was happening, or should I say not happening, in 1953, summer rituals. Public swimming pools were closed, Little League fields in most towns were empty, and just like today, mothers didn't have their kids with them while they were grocery shopping. I often hear from polio survivors how they felt abandoned when they were in hospital polio wards because, like today's coronavirus patients, they weren't allowed to have visitors. They would go weeks without seeing their parents, and when they did, it was from a far distance, usually behind glass windows. So this is me just before I started to walk. It's time where you say, "Aw." You know.
True.
What's interesting in this photo is what's missing. My mom refused to have my leg braces photographed. I suspect for fear that people would ostracize me and or my family because I had polio.
Just like
My mom
FDR.
yeah, exactly. My mom would tell me how well after I recovered from polio, we would be walking down the street and people would literally cross the street to avoid coming in contact with us.
My goodness.
They didn't know how long someone was contagious.
Right.
I was, as Lynn said, I was paralyzed from my neck down for 6 months at age 10 months old, only 6 months before the Salk vaccine was widely tested. My great aunt was a nun who spent most of her career in a hospital, and she could read a hospital chart. And because I was in an overcrowded polio ward, she was worried about my muscles atrophying, and she knew of Sister Kinney's physical therapy. Sister Kinney was a nurse from Australia that developed the physical therapy program for polio victims so their muscles didn't atrophy. My mom took me out of the hospital, did Sister Kinney's physical therapy on me, and I walked a year later. In fact, my brother would take the example of my parents and lean me up against the refrigerator and encourage me to walk. But unlike my parents, when I started to fall, he didn't catch me. So eventually, out of self-defense, I put my foot out and thus I stopped myself from falling, thus my first steps. And to this day, my brother takes credit for teaching me how to walk. And as the years went by, I got to the point where most people would never guess I had had polio. My mom did such a great job protecting my muscles while I had polio. I had a fairly normal childhood, and I actually played baseball, basketball, and football in high school.
Well done.
However, my coaches didn't know I had had polio, and my parents didn't know it would affect my ability to compete. I was very slow and very clumsy. My coaches always yelled at me and often called me lazy. It was a very frustrating time in my life.
Yep.
That was polio for a lot of people. I was lucky, one of the lucky ones. Many young adults and children died or grew up paralyzed or had an arm or leg that was significantly smaller because their muscles did atrophy. I have many friends that got polio when they were older. I was blessed because I don't remember having polio. My mom would tell me how I would scream in pain when she stretched my muscles while I was paralyzed. For those who were older when they got polio, they remember all too well the pain and suffering and how many of them suffered through multiple painful corrective surgeries. One friend of mine even had their good leg shortened 5 inches to match their polio leg so they could walk without a significant limp. When I turned 40, I started to have renewed muscle weakness, joint pain, and extreme fatigue. Eventually, after seeing 10 different doctors in 2 years, many of them never having seen a polio survivor, I was finally diagnosed with post-polio syndrome. Many never get a diagnosis of post-polio syndrome and suffer without knowing why. Like I said, often being misdiagnosed with other illnesses, such as fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome. But although their symptoms are very similar, the treatment is completely opposite. 18 years later, I am now confined to a wheelchair for most of my mobility. For every child we save from polio, we truly are saving them from a life of pain and suffering. These are some of the symptoms those of us with post-polio syndrome often encounter. These symptoms show up about 30 to 40 years after the original polio virus attack, and as many as 70% of those paralyzed by polio. The polio virus doesn't come back. Basically, the muscles that took over for the damaged muscles, they start dying off early from overuse. The more a polio survivor overuses their muscles, the faster their muscles die off. My neurologist said that if I didn't want to lose the total use of my legs again, I had to make dramatic changes in my life. The old adage of use it or lose it had to be replaced with conserve to preserve. But like most polio survivors, being an A-type personality, it was very hard for me to slow down. To avoid overuse, I now restrict my steps to a couple hundred steps a day. Many days, each step is very painful. However, I've learned that there's very little I can't do. I just have to find a different way of doing it.
Fantastic.
And I'm lucky I live in a world where there are organizations like Rotary International, with Rotarians like yourself who care about the welfare of others and who put service above self. So count your blessings, because I'm assuming that most of you received your vaccinations when you were younger,
Yep.
protecting you from childhood diseases. There are some people who cannot be vaccinated, or there are others who have medical conditions like cancer, going through chemotherapy causing a compromised immune system, or a baby under the age of 12 months old who cannot receive a number of their childhood vaccinations yet. That's why it's important to have the majority of people around those people vaccinated, thus creating what's called herd immunity. Now, herd immunity is a term that over the past political season the term was really politicized, but the true meaning of herd immunity is based on science and vaccinating as much of the community as possible to protect those who I spoke about earlier.
True.
In 2019, because we have areas of the US with lower vaccination rates than India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, or Nigeria, there were over 1,300 cases of measles in the United States. The US was declared measles eradicated in 2000. Anti-vaxxers say measles is a minor illness like the cold. It's not. Over 207,000 kids died in 2019 from measles in the world. To control measles, 93% of the population needs to be vaccinated to create herd immunity. For polio, you need at least 85% of the population vaccinated for herd immunity. We don't know what the percentage is for COVID-19 yet, but estimates are around 80% of the population will need to be vaccinated to create herd immunity for COVID-19 and for us to get out of this pandemic situation. And according to Bill Gates, for every dollar we spend on childhood immunizations, you get $44 in economic benefit. That's the cost savings of not having to treat that person while they're ill, the cost savings of not having to treat that person their whole life because they were ill, and the productivity that that person will have their whole life because they weren't ill. Not bad for a dollar to get $44 in economic benefit. And according to the World Health Organization, vaccines currently prevent up to 3 million deaths per year. As you know, Rotary started Polio Plus in 1985. 125 endemic countries had almost 1,000 cases of paralytic polio a day. And the World Health Organization estimates that 80 million babies did not get their life-saving vaccinations due to the COVID pandemic last year. So far this year, we've had only one case of polio in the world. that's in Afghanistan. However, it takes a little over a month to classify and to actually call a case of polio and to do DNA testing. They can tell exactly what block that strain of polio came from. So they really were, getting down there. In 2020, we had 140 cases. 56 in Afghanistan, 84 in Pakistan. And because we didn't vaccinate for over 7 months in those countries, I thought this number of 140 cases would actually be much higher. The incredible thing is that we help vaccinate more than 450 million kids every year in developing countries. And August 25th was a great day for all of Africa and all Rotarians. Nigeria being polio free for over 4 years, all of Africa was declared wild polio free. Nigeria overcame tremendous obstacles to accomplish this feat, once again proving that wild polio can be defeated. This is a small sample of the difficulty polio plus vaccinators go through to protect the cold chain of the vaccine and to get the vaccine to remote areas. This cold chain will certainly come, that we helped establish over the past 35 years, will certainly come into play with protecting the COVID-19 vaccine to get to remote areas. And there are many obstacles to eradicate polio besides the virus's ability to live outside of the body in fecal matter for a short period of time. Additional obstacles include war, migrating populations, difficult terrain, poor sanitation in areas that have low vaccination rates, and the lack of vaccine acceptance. And until polio is eradicated, it is a world threat. And because there's no cure for polio, vaccination is the only protection. To me, this is the most powerful slide I have in my presentation.
Yep.
It's a global aviation pattern of the world in a 24-hour period. Each line is an airplane flight. You can hardly see North America and Europe on this map. To me, this is a perfect example of how COVID-19 spread so fast throughout the world back last spring. And we truly are a plane ride away from polio returning to the North America, especially if we don't eradicate polio and if we don't keep up the vaccination rates. Unfortunately, vaccines have become a victim of their own success.
Yep.
This is a typical Sunday event throughout the country after the Salk vaccine was available in 1956. I only wish attitudes toward vaccines had the same enthusiasm today as they did back then. I pray that the eradication of polio happens soon so that kids all around the world will avoid what happened to many like myself when a vaccine was not available. So I'm often asked, what is the plus in polio plus? Well, when they're vaccinating in a particular area in a country, let's say they have also cases of measles, they'll include the measles vaccine with the cases of with the polio vaccine. In most cases, they'll also be giving vitamin A supplements, protecting the kids from vitamin A deficiencies, which can be very lethal. Okay. During this unprecedented time with COVID pandemic, like I said, door-to-door vaccination stopped for about 7 months, but that didn't stop Rotary's Polio Plus machine. The infrastructure Rotary helped build, including its tools, workforce, and extensive surveillance networks, have been used to help prevent the spread of COVID-19 by supporting response activities in many countries, including Nigeria, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. This truly represents the plus in Polio Plus, just as it did in the past to respond to outbreaks of Ebola, yellow fever, and the avian flu. A prime example of that is the role Polio Plus played in stopping the Ebola outbreak twice in the past 6 years in Africa, literally, especially in Nigeria, literally stopping the Ebola outbreak from becoming a world pandemic. Here we have a polio survivor in Nigeria who used to have to travel miles to get contaminated water for his herd and family. Polio Plus drilled boreholes in his village, and now he gets clean water for his herd and family without traveling miles, thus becoming so much more productive. Reaching all children requires engaging community leaders, providing culturally sensitive information, and finding out how to meet other community needs. For instance, for example, in Nigeria, Polio Plus made progress with nomadic populations by combining vaccinating their children with vaccinating their animals. Their cattle would be immunized against brucellosis and anthrax bacteria infections.
Wow.
Thus protecting the animals also protected the nomads from these infections. And it motivated their cooperation towards having their children vaccinated for polio. Certainly a win-win situation.
Sure.
Last month in India, NID workers and volunteers vaccinated more than 32 million children in one weekend.
Wow.
In Pakistan, just 2 weekends ago, 287,000 frontline polio workers vaccinated more than 40 million children.
My goodness.
32 million of them also received that vitamin A supplements. All in one weekend, an incredible project.
Truly.
These immense NID vaccine campaigns are also changing societies in many Muslim countries by employing women to go house to house vaccinating children. In the Muslim religion, a man cannot enter a home if the man of the house is not there. A woman can. Therefore, by employing women to do the vaccinations, less children are skipped and the number of women in the workforce are increasing, thus changing societal views of women working outside of the home in those countries. During NIDs in areas that have malaria, mosquito nets are given out by Polio Plus workers. This polio survivor in Nigeria had no way of financially supporting himself until Polio Plus taught him how to make hand-driven bikes that allow polio survivors to get around without dragging themselves on the ground. With the help of Polio Plus, he started a business making these tricycles. Here's one of his employees, also a polio survivor, that now has a job and is a productive member of society, mostly because of Rotary's Polio Plus. So while confronting the new challenges of today, it's important that Rotary members continue the fight to end polio, to sustain our commitment to the children of the world that we made in 1985, and to reach our fundraising goal of $50 million, just like we did last year that qualified us for the full Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation matching monies, making our $50 million become $150 million. Continued contributions to Polio Plus will ensure that polio eradication activities continue and that we come out of this crisis strong and tackle the remaining barriers to a polio-free world. And I often hear from Rotary clubs and district leaders, well, we do give to Polio Plus. A sad fact is that less than 10% of all Rotarians actually do donate to Polio Plus, and only 53% of the clubs in the world donate to Polio Plus.
Wow.
We must do a better job promoting the reasons why we must end polio now. If every Rotarian in the world gave $40 a year to Polio Plus, we would easily achieve our $50 million goal. And did you know a Snickers bar costs more than a polio vaccine? There are many ways to think outside of the box to raise money for Polio Plus. My district, 7630, all of Delaware and Eastern Shore, Maryland, is doing a PIN fundraiser with matching district designated funds that sent to Polio Plus. The matching district designated funds triggers a dollar for dollar match by the Rotary's World Fund. And then that number is tripled. A $40 PIN purchase becomes $360 and 600 kids get vaccinated. An incredible way to maximize your dollars by getting 9-time factor on your donation.
Sure.
Our district governor last year, Bill Ferguson, during his official club visits, raised $14,000 selling pins with all the matching monies.
Wow.
Which that $14,000 became $126,000. I have a number of districts and clubs throughout the country buying pins from me. I'll put my email address in the chat box if your club or district is interested.
Hell yeah.
I'm selling them at cost and plus freight. Last month, I sent 600 pins to a district in Alaska and 20 pins to a club in Germany. And as USA coordinator for the world's greatest meal, I would be remiss not to mention the incredible fundraising program started by UK Rotarian Mukesh Malhotra and Australian polio survivor and Rotarian Suzanne Ray. They're friends. They actually met up in London when Suzanne was visiting, and they had lunch. They fought over the bill. Suzanne lost. And so she said what she was going to pay for lunch, she's going to donate to Polio Plus. That's the first world's greatest meal to help end polio. And through a very successful social media campaign over the past 5 years, they've raised enough money given to the Rotary Foundation's Polio Plus to vaccinate more than 19.5 million children. This is a fun way to raise money for Polio Plus. Just go to wgmeal.com. And please remember to buy a lot of Snickers bars by donating to Polio Plus. I want to end with some exciting news. The polio vaccine is, like I said, is the best weapon we have to fight polio. Here's past Rotary International Vice President Ann Matthews on the right, and Nancy Barbie on the left. Nancy's a North Carolina Rotarian who has organized many national immunization days. Here they are helping vaccinate a child in India a few years ago. The exciting news is that this weapon, the oral polio vaccine, is getting an upgrade that will truly be one of the nails needed to finally put in the coffin of this dreaded disease called polio. Polio Plus and its wonderful world partners have been developing a new oral polio vaccine. In fact, this new oral polio vaccine is the first vaccine ever approved by that emergency, the new emergency act, well before the COVID-19, vaccines. As you know, occasionally the current oral polio vaccine will mutate and actually cause some cases of what's called circulating vaccine-derived polio. This new oral polio vaccine, designed not to mutate, will be in the field at the end of this month and beginning of March in the 15 countries that have had the vaccine-derived polio cases. Truly, certainly one of the weapons that we will need to eradicate polio. And as I've said before, I am one of the lucky ones. If I was born in a developing country back in the 50s, I wouldn't be here today. I've shared my personal story with you, certainly not for your sympathy. Through the love of my family and friends and being fortunate to find knowledgeable doctors, I've been able to be a father, husband, son, friend, now a proud grandfather, and a proud Rotarian. And please continue the fight to help eradicate polio, because going back is not an option. World Polio Day was October 24th, but for the kids in the world that we haven't vaccinated yet, World Polio Day should be every day. We still have work to do to finish the job. Thank you for listening to my story, and thank you for your continued support of Rotary's Polio Plus. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have, and I'll put my email address in the chat box.
Excellent, John. Hey, thanks for joining us, Ginger. Just want to point out, Ginger joined. She's our other advocate in this district here in 6380. Has been into polio stuff forever that I know in her.
John and I are familiar with each other, are we not, John? Yes.
Absolutely.
Very much so. I'm sorry I'm late, folks. I'm
No problem.
good. I was just having internet issues all morning, so no connection.
Yeah, no problem. The recording will be up on the site later today. Very good presentation, worth telling people to come and watch it. Really good one.
Yeah, John's a great speaker and a
Very
great
good.
advocate.
Very,
you,
very.
Ginger.
I learned a lot. I learned a lot today.
A lot
Thank
of great information and how it parallels COVID-19.
Yeah, that was a real key for me. I would love people to see that, because I've been saying that to some people, but I didn't have the information that John showed. It really did sell the point to me very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
Okay, anybody else?
You have no
excellent,
objections?
just excellent presentation.
Thank you.
I'd just like a comment. Seem to be hearing more and more of anti-vaxxers. Can you just comment further? I know you used the term, of course, in your presentation, just where we're at in your perspective when it comes to anti-vaxxers.
Well, it's very difficult to fight it because they have a very strong, very organized, anti-vaccine campaigns. They say that the big pharma companies are the ones making money. They are the ones that are actually making money. They sell these holistic, supplements and things like that, books, seminars, weekends, and the original anti-vaxxer, Andrew Wakefield from England, was a doctor who did a study, on the effects of vaccines causing autism. Well, it was published. His study was published and went worldwide. Front page news: vaccines cause autism. Well, a number of years later, they proved that it was not just wrong information; it was a fraudulent study. The study was paid for by a law firm suing a pharmaceutical company. There were only 12 kids in the study, 6 of which they proved had autism symptoms before they were vaccinated. Andrew Wakefield was stripped of his ability to practice medicine in England. He is now living in a mansion in Texas, is paid by anti-vaxxers to go around still promoting his study. And it's very difficult. Social media is starting to clamp down. I just saw a notice that I think LinkedIn or one of the social media sites have banned Robert Kennedy Jr., who was a big anti-vaxxer.
Oh, really?
They threw him off the site because of his anti-vaccine, false information going out there. They use, partial facts, like mercury is in the vaccines as a preservative. Well, the type of mercury that was in the vaccines is not the same mercury that's found in fish that is harmful to human beings. The chemical makeup of the mercury that was in the vaccine is not harmful. Okay. However, they did take it out because of the public relations kind of thing.
Sure.
The problem is when they took it out, because it's a preservative, it tripled the cost of the vaccine. Okay. So, we have this kind of thing, and we have to, especially Polio Plus, has to get more active and more vocal on the benefits of vaccines. I pray that this COVID-19 has really been an eye opener to a lot of people, and when we do get to the point of herd immunity because of the vaccine, not because of people having caught COVID-19, but because of the vaccine, it'll prove again, like polio did, that vaccines are very helpful. when they first said that there was a new vaccine coming out, I think the polls showed that there were only 40% of the population in the United States that was going to receive, was willing to receive the COVID-19 vaccines. A recent study showed that over 70% now are willing to receive the vaccine.
Good.
Good.
Again, hopefully we get to the point where it's even more.
When you're going to say 70, I was thinking of 60. I'm glad to see it's gone up. It seems to be going up continually because of confidence.
Yeah, and proving that, people are not getting deathly ill from the vaccine itself. The first two vaccines that have come out, people say, oh, well, I don't want to catch COVID-19 because they rushed it from, well, it's a dead virus vaccine. Just similar to the flu vaccine, it's impossible to get COVID-19 from the vaccine. Same thing as the flu. It's impossible to get the flu from the vaccine because it's a dead virus vaccine.
Right.
Well, and also, Jen, can we just add to that, we, when it comes to the polio vaccine, we had a problem where our CIA, and this happened many years ago, but it's still out there, they used the HIV vaccine as a way to lure the search for bin Laden, and it scared a lot of people. They felt it was a fake vaccine. So Rotary has developed a very active campaign in some of those countries for advertising and advocating vaccine and why vaccines are good for you. And that same campaign is now being used for the COVID vaccine. We have altered it and changed the message, and it's pretty much for all vaccines. So as we're out there, we're doing COVID, we're doing, well, we're not doing COVID, but we're working alongside the people that are vaccinating COVID. They're using our systems. And then we're using, we're also vaccinating for measles.
Yep. And, one of the other things that they're doing is that they're actually using the clubs in Pakistan and Afghanistan to promote, to make it their project, not a Western Hemisphere, project. It's their project.
Good.
So we're not imposing our beliefs on them. The clubs and the governments in those countries are the ones that are promoting it, and thus they're not as fearful of the vaccine. And yeah, that campaign to find bin Laden really hurt our efforts in those countries.
I bet it did.
John, I have a general question, and answer it however you wish. Do you feel yourself personally that your region of the world where you live, that your community really is well informed about polio?
I don't think any community is well informed about polio. And like I said in my talk, vaccines have become a victim of their own success. And people forgot about what happened and how fearful mothers and fathers were of polio every summer. And, this COVID-19 situation has really brought that back into the realm of reality. And again, I hope it helps the cause of, how good vaccines really are, and changes the world's attitude towards vaccines. And like I said, those surveys and those polls that are coming out are that figure is really changing a lot. And I just hope we get to herd immunity before these variant cases of COVID start changing to the point where the vaccine doesn't help anymore.
Agreed.
On that end, about the people in this area that know about polio. I was at the Toronto Science Center a couple of years ago and spoke with a group of nursing students from Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto, and none of the student nurses had ever heard of polio.
Oh, wow.
Jeez,
So one
unbelievable.
of our dilemmas, speaking particularly from a Rotary Club point of view.
I didn't hear the question. What?
Well,
Speak up, Lynn.
the question is, what can a Rotary Club like ours do in our community to raise the level of awareness about polio, and some of the information, at least, that is obviously included in your presentation. What effective method might exist where we can get to the community? And I'll just add a little comment, because Farmington is an area that has always been close to polio within the community. We have what was Children's Hospital within the environment, where the hospitals from Metro Detroit area sent polio victims to be treated with the Sister Kenny treatment method.
Right.
But as you say, you know, now that time has passed and a class full of nurses that don't even know what polio is or never heard of it, we're continually trying to overcome that obstacle in order to get more people interested in participating through contributions, efforts, whatever. And we keep trying, but we're not making much of a dent in the container here for raising funds for polio.
Well, I think we have a unique opportunity by going to the media and also social media, by bringing up the similarities between
Right.
polio back pre-Salk days and today's coronavirus. Now, I got contacted by a public relations person within Rotary International that set up interviews with newspapers here in Delaware. And they did an article on myself and a couple of other Rotary polio survivors here in my district. So that may be an angle that you can take, is getting a hold of the media and talking about the similarities, even showing part of, you know, my talk,
Absolutely.
showing the comparisons, and getting an article in your local newspaper and your regional newspapers to, bring up the, similarities and bring attention to Rotary's Polio Plus program. Social media is a great way to do it, and move forward with that.
Hey,
Ginger,
John.
I
do you
agree
have
with
any-
you, John, because I know that when I speak, I usually talk on whatever topic the club is asked me to talk on, or zone or district, wherever I'm at. But I find myself that when I talk about our personal story, our family story, I see more eyes in the crowd interested. The hospital that Lynn is talking about is actually where our brother was treated. So I'm very familiar with that hospital, and then I worked in that hospital as a teen. So I met a lot of the polio survivors who were living there. It was then converted to a nursing home, and I worked in the Farmington nursing home. So, and it was a lot of polio survivors. So, but yeah, I think the personal stories help. I also think right now the advantage with the media that we have, that I don't think Rotary in general is taking enough advantage of, is letting people know how much we're assisting with COVID awareness and COVID vaccinations in other parts of the world.
Yeah, and the cold chain that we have established with polio is certainly going to play a major role in protecting the COVID-19 vaccines from to get to remote areas. yeah, it's definitely one of those, opportunities that we do have. So, and, one of the other things is, we talked earlier before, when I first came on, about the size of your club. Right? Well, there's a Polio Plus chair in central Pennsylvania. I think it's District 7360. That he's been a Polio Plus chair since the beginning, since 1985. And he gave a talk many years ago to a small group, and one of those people became a member of his Rotary Club. And he was very personal, he had, he was very quiet person, and a lot of people didn't know him very well. They didn't know that he was a multi-millionaire.
Oh, wow.
And when because of this one talk, he became a Rotarian, and because of this one talk he heard, he did pass, and in his will he left Polio Plus $6 million.
Wow.
Wow.
So you never know,
Exactly.
what the effect of one person, one idea. Hey, really Rotary started by, really one of four people. Easter seals, so many, shelter box, Rise Against Hunger. All of these organizations started from the idea from one person. So you never know what effect you can have on an individual. So, keep up the great work that you folks are doing.
Yeah,
Hey, John.
Farmington is a big advocate.
John, are you aware of the fact our club and the district, to a degree, is doing purple crocus?
I was not aware of it, but I'm very aware of purple crocus.
Yep.
Oh geez, this is before I moved to Delaware, so it's over 8 years. Probably about 10 years ago when they started it. I saw something on, probably Facebook about it, and I actually spent money to get 2 boxes shipped to me from England. Okay, it was more expensive to get it shipped than the cost of the purple crocuses, and did that campaign, and then for a while, I think National Products, before they were merged with Russell Hampton, they were selling them here in the United States. But
Yeah, we did. We planted a few thousand this year.
That's awesome. That's a great program.
And we're going to try and make it a district-wide project this year and plant hopefully many thousand. Purely for awareness.
If you get it to become a district project, get the district to designate to match any sales with district designated funds, and that creates. Well, right now it's $1 for $1. In July 1, it'll go down to 50-cent match, but still is an incredible match. It's an incredible way to maximize your dollars and to get people to donate. For instance, this pin, like I said in my talk, we sell for $40, but with our matching district designated funds, it becomes $360. And I have about 3,000 pins shipped to different districts and clubs throughout the United States. And if all 3,000 sell for what they're supposed to sell, it'll be about $900,000 for Polio Plus.
Well, maybe David will give me a hand seeing if the district governor has agreed with us that we should do it, but we haven't seen any real sense of urgentness to get the business going to buy more. We did raise a few dollars when we sold the bulbs. We sold the bulbs for $10. $1 went to end polio, but we need a lot more of that for this coming year, so we can do it with many thousand.
Well, and our zone is doing the polio zone, polio society pins which I know, I haven't seen anything from our district that we're joining in, but that's similar to the Every Rotarian Every Year. $100 donation gives you a Polio Society pin. And I know some of the nearby districts here have raised thousands of dollars. But you're right, John, about you never know who is going to help you out. You know, when Pakistan when Aziz Mamon on his Zoom put out the request for masks, I threw up just a PayPal Facebook fundraiser and raised $8,000 in 3 weeks' time for Aziz and to get masks into for that first campaign early January in Pakistan. Now, of course, at the end of January, World Health met with Rotary, and now Rotary will purchase PPE for the vaccinators. So we won't need to do separate funding. But when I did that, there were other people on the Zoom that did as well. And so there were many, many people from other areas, 6,400 in different areas that raised $5,000, and that 5,000 bought 27,000 masks.
Wow.
But they needed 40 million.
Yeah.
They-
Well, you know, Ginger,
Okay.
that's what I love about Rotary. You know, your efforts are individual efforts, and they are maximized by 1.2 million Rotarians. So
Right.
it's a really great way of doing it.
John,
Thank you.
thank you so much for giving us a
Fantastic.
motivational talk as well as an informational talk about not a favorite subject, but certainly an important one for polio, no matter where we all are.
I'll be rewatching this one myself.
I
Thank
think
you.
so. So again, thank you very much. We will be in touch for further information along the line because you are an excellent resource for the meeting today. One of the other few things that we do in formality is recite, at least read and consider the four-way test at the end of the meeting prior to the bell. So if you have any need for,
For those that can remember.
yeah, get them out of order, whatever, once in a while, but as long as you get the four in there, that's the main thing. So
Lead us off.
for this morning, the Rotary four-way test. Is it the truth?
Is that the truth?
Is
Is
it
it
fair to
fair
all
to all
concerned?
concerned?
Will it build
Will it
goodwill?
build
Goodwill
Better
and better
friendships?
friendships.
Will it be
Will it be
beneficial to all
beneficial
concerned?
concerned?
That's one of our
And-
better attempts.
And have fun.
Meeting
Thanks,
adjourned.
John.
We'll
Thank-
stay in
Thank you.
touch, John.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice
Thanks,
Keep up the great
John.
work, Ginger.
Thanks,
Really,
Dawn.
really appreciate
Bye-bye.
it, John.
Thank you, John.
Bye now.